Let's just say you're a new wet shaver. Got into the hobby, you've got your brush, you've got some water, you got your soap. What more do you need? Maybe some aftershave, maybe a razor would be nice, but for the purposes of this video today, we are just going to be talking about loading up that brush. Now, brushes load a little bit differently depending on if you have a synthetic brush or you have animal hair. For those of you that are just starting out in the hobby, there are different kinds of synthetics. There are different kinds of animal hair brushes. For the purposes of this video, we are using my Mammoth Shaving Badger brush. It's got a fan knot in there. We are also going to be using one of the first custom brushes that I ever purchased, and that is my Oz Shaving Company Tornadic Shave Brush. These knots are extremely inexpensive. You can go to places like Maggard's, West Coast Shaving, and generally synthetic knots are going to be significantly cheaper than Badger brushes. You can often find at your local pharmacy, stores like that, boar brushes, sometimes even horsehair brushes at places like Target. But if you don't have one of these locations near you and you want to order online, which is truthfully what I've done in most of these products in this hobby, is I've ordered them all online, then you can opt for something like this. I think this is a wonderful beginner brush to choose from. So we're going to be showing you guys how to load with a synthetic and how to load with an animal hair brush. Now the loadings are going to be extremely similar, if not almost identical, but I just want you to see kind of generally what you're going to be looking at and maybe what that's going to sound like when you're loading. We also have two different kinds of soaps here. So when you're loading, another question that comes up is how are you loading? Where are you loading from? Well, this is a great starter soap. This is a great soap for experienced wet shavers. I have more Sterling soap products than I do any other soap in my den, and there's a reason for that. It's incredibly affordable, and they have a wide selection of soaps, aftershaves, matching peripheral products like deodorants. If you fall in love with a scent, more likely than not, you're going to be able to get it across the board with everything scented in that particular thing. Shampoos, body bars, etc. Sterling's your ticket. They've got a really good bang for the buck, so their cost is really low as far as the price that you're going to be paying for these particular soaps, but the performance is still incredibly good. You'll see experienced wet shavers with these products all the time, and it's because they are great performing soap bases. So we're going to be discussing when you have your soap, loading directly from the tub versus maybe loading from something like a mug. So when I first started out with the hobby, I found a mug or a cheap porcelain bowl. This isn't the particular one, but this wasn't that too far from when I had originally started. You might find something like this. I found something like this at my antique shop, Williams Mug Shaving Soap. This stuff is incredibly cheap. You can find it for around $1 at your local store. I found it at one of my local grocery stores, and that was actually the first soap that I ever used when I got into the hobby. Now, soaps like this do require some special treatment in order to get them to really perform optimally for you. And we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit too, because there are nuances, there are things. It's all about the prep. When you're shaving, you're going to get as much as you put into it. And the more prep that you provide, the more satisfied you are going to be with the overall shave that you're going to have. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and start with the mug. So when we're getting into loading the brush, first thing we need is a nice moisturized puck. Now, this is talking about specifically hard pucks of soap with shave creams. You do not need to pre-soak the cream because shaving cream reacts differently than shaving soap or hard soap. You want to just wet the brush in those instances, and then the actual loading of the soap is going to be, or cream is going to be very similar to how we load these. That's the only step that you're really going to take out of this overall process. So what I typically do with Williams Mug, you really want to submerge it underwater. You want to make sure that soap is covered, that soap is going to be slick, and we're good to go. Because this is sometimes called by some in the community blooming, I like to call it pre-soaking, as we're not really blooming it for the sake of fragrance. We are soaking it for the sake of making sure that puck is saturated with water. It's going to be easier on our brushes as we're loading those up, and you're going to see increased performance when you pre-soak like this. I do this with all of my soaps. I always cover at least the first layer, with a thin layer of water. That way, at least the entire portion of the soap is underneath water. It's pulling that water into the soap itself, and it's going to come onto your brush much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this sterling. I'm just putting a thin layer of water to completely cover that soap here. And what I typically like to do is swirl it around, because another little known fact when you're first starting out wet shaving is the quote-unquote bloom water, or in this case pre-soak water, is excellent as a pre-shave. This is going to combine with the soap to make for an extra slick face feel when you're actually putting on the lather as well. So it just gives you an added layer of slickness, and generally speaking, most soaps you're going to really benefit from this. And as you experiment, which I encourage you to do, you're going to find that you're going to get some really good performance out of some soaps with the pre-soak water, the bloom water. Other soaps, maybe not as much. Just experiment and see what you can find. That's the great thing about this hobby. These soaps are not going anywhere fast. You're going to use one of these soaps for upwards of 6 months, if not more, depending on how many soaps you have. And if you guys can see behind me, I've got plenty, so these aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But you just let those soak for just a little bit. You can do this, you can let your soaps pre-soak when you're going in taking a shower or a bath. Coming out, you should be good to go. Or you can just do it for maybe a minute or a few seconds. It really doesn't take much. Now, this is where we're going to vary just a little bit. With animal hair brushes, you typically do want to let those pre-soak in water. You want them to absorb the water, but the funny thing is we're going to be wringing those out in a second, because animal hair brushes really retain water, so they benefit from a good soak. You're going to be seeing significantly softer bristles that way, and you're going to be seeing better performance when you're actually loading up the soap. With synthetics, they don't absorb water. The water just clings to the bristles. So all we need to do here is swirl this around in the water, get that water nice and on there, and then you just wring it. All I do is I squeeze it till I squeeze out some of that water, and then we're good to go. What you'll also see from the community is some people will give it a few flicks, and then you're good to go. That's the nice thing about synthetics. They're generally really cheap, easy to take care of. They're less to be finicky as in regards to if the bristles are falling out or if you have certain kind of performance issues. Generally speaking, I would say with a great badger brush, you're going to get that premium feel and performance, but you can also definitely get that from synthetics. They've come a long way in the past few years, and I have more synthetics than I have animal hair for that reason. They're just good performers, and they don't take a lot of prep time. So we wring out this. We've had the Arcadia by Sterling pre-soaking for a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and dump out that water since I'm not shaving with you guys today, and we're going to get started. Now, generally speaking, what you want to do is you can kind of see how my brush is fanning out. You'll hear that term a lot in the hobby, the splay or the fanning out of the brush bristles. You really want to get that soap in the brush. So we're putting a lot of pressure on this brush handle specifically to really make sure that we are loading it up with plenty of soap. And you can see already that that soap's already starting to get around really nice. Part of that is because we pre-soaked the soap. The other part is because, of course, there is still water in the brush itself. Now, I was doing that for the purposes of you guys with my right hand, but I am actually left-handed, so we're going to go ahead and do this with the left hand as well. What a lot of people like to do too, and I don't necessarily know if there's any merit in this, but I don't say that it hurts to do it, is actually turning the soap tub upside down. That way the soap really dribbles into the actual brush itself. And you'll go ahead and increase your speed on here. You'll kind of see that a lather will start to form, and there are even individuals in the community that will lather their brushes completely from the tub. I don't like to do that. I don't like to waste unnecessary product, but really, what you're going to want to do is press down hard on the soap. This gets me guaranteed results every single time. Press down hard on the soap. Once you've had a few minutes where you can kind of start seeing where the lather builds along the edges, you're also going to hear almost like it's getting thicker, less airy and foamy, and more thick consistency. That's going to also apply to your face, or if you're transferring over to a bowl for that, and we'll take care of that in a later video. But what I like to do is after we press on the brush for just a few seconds there, I also like to take the actual edges of the bristles and just move it around the bowl. That way we're getting those edges really saturated with soap. And as you can see there, that is plenty of soap. That's going to get us multiple passes, especially if you build in a bowl or if you build on your face. This is going to build a beautiful lather, no problem at all. And we'll get into that technique later. And as you guys can see, already without building anything, we're already getting plenty of soap there. Alright guys, now that we showed you what that looked like with a synthetic knot, we're also going to go ahead and move on to the Williams mug. Now like I said, for beginners this can be a tricky soap because you might get a lot of airiness, and for you when you're first starting out you might not necessarily know that that means anything. But what you want when you're building a lather on your face is a nice, dense, thick soap with good volume and good cushion. To do that, you need the appropriate amount of water, and you need to take the amount of correct prepping time in order to make sure that you're getting the most out of your soap. So we've got that pre-soaked in there. I'm going to go ahead and dump out that quote-unquote bloom water. Then we're going to go ahead and take our animal hair brush here, set that down. Like I said, this is our badger knot, and we wring it out. So we're not really having to flick it or anything. You notice that there's not any water dripping off here, but there's still plenty of water in this knot. What the thing that you need to keep in mind whenever you're loading your brush is it is very easy to oversaturate your brush with water. Give it a good wring. If you need to add more water, you can, but taking away water when you're just trying to load up is a lot more difficult, and it's especially more difficult when you're actually building the lather in the bowl or on your face. So here we have the mug full with the soap. All the water's been dumped out. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. Same principle is going to apply here. We're going to apply some pressure, and we're going to start moving around. And you guys can kind of hear that. We can hear the bubbles. We can hear it really trying to get that soap to come out there. Now, I personally don't have any problems getting Williams mug to perform. The reason for a lot of people not being able to get it to perform is they don't do the proper prep. They don't pre-soak the soap. With this soap, you do have to submerge it completely underwater to get good performance, but you can get great performance out of like a $1 soap puck, which is absolutely incredible. And if you're just starting out in this hobby and you're not sure you're wanting to continue with it, making sure that you're not spending too much money on this is extremely important. I mean, I barely spent anything when I first started just to make sure it was something that I wanted to do. And you can kind of tell that we started out sounding a little bit more foamy, and we're getting a little bit more dense. So like I said, you really want to press on it, but after you pressed on it, you just want to gently, with the tips of your bristles, move it around to collect that soap on the very edges of your bristles. And there you go. That is plenty. That's going to give us plenty of passes. And then in another video, we'll go ahead and cover how you take something like this and apply it to the face and build a good face lather, and how you can build up a great bowl lather too. But there you have it, guys. There is nothing to it. This hobby can be really daunting. There can be a lot to it, but the thing that you need to keep in mind is just stick to the basics. The more you practice, the better you're gonna get at it. And that's what I found. I mean, I didn't start out with this huge selection behind me, getting more comfortable with collecting multiple razors, different kinds of brushes, etc. You start out with something that's extremely cheap, very affordable, making sure that you get the basics down, and then you can venture more into the hobby and get a better understanding on how you can maximize performance. And it's, like I said, all in the prep. That's how I get consistent performance with my videos. That's how I get consistent performance when I go live, when I'm doing my shave of the days and I comment on how a soap performs. I can only understand how it performs once I understand how to do the basics on prepping the soap to make sure that I'm getting that consistency across the board. And this method will work with any shave soap that you have. Like I said, creams are a little bit different. With creams, you're just going to be getting the bristles wet, and then you're going to be loading that onto your brush. They come on a little bit thick, so you'll be adding a little bit more water as you go into the face, but that is for another video. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to just learn the basics with me here today. I hope you enjoy the tutorial series. I'm really looking forward to doing this with you guys. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see in the comment section below. Thank you so much, and shave on.